Back about 2 years ago when I first started this channel, the main reason for it was to just create a little database for collectors and just so they had something to look up and know what was out there and expose them to each and every issue from each and every publication. The plan was 10 videos, and if you look at my very first video, it was 1 minute and 10 seconds. Now they're almost 2 hours, and the channel has really evolved into something special thanks to all of you guys who kind of morphed me along the way and steered me in this direction, and we've been tearing it up ever since. So back in the beginning, I was clueless. Not that I have any clue now, but I was clueless with tech and video and YouTube, and I don't even own a computer. If it isn't done on my phone, I can't do it. I go out to my Jeep, I grabbed my cup holder, stuck my phone in it, and just record it. Pretty much nothing much has changed except for the material-wise. But in the beginning, I didn't have a plan to take it this far. I just noticed the other day there's over 2,000 subscribers. Jesus, man, that's really cool. I never, ever expected that. You guys have been awesome along the way and forced me to keep going with this, and it's been nothing but a lot of fun. So what I want to do is go back and redo some of my older videos that I first put out with the intentions of, exposing it to everybody and letting them see month by month, year by year. The channel has evolved a little bit, and some things now I can be a little bit more modernized and brought up a little closer and stuff like that. So I'm probably going to be doing a little bit of a reshoot on a couple of publications from back a few years ago. And we're going to start with Wrestling Revue. Stanley Weston, boxing artist for The Ring magazine. He was still with the boxing. Boxing was his main passion, but he loved wrestling. And he wanted to start a wrestling-only magazine. Now, Stanley had his hand in the 1950s issues early on, and went on to do a split combination magazine of boxing and wrestling. And this was going to be its first standalone major publication for mass consumption, meaning sold all over the newsstands and in the arenas, not just certain territories, not just certain parts of the country. It was to be sold worldwide, international, all over. And right out of the gate, we're going to start with the good. We're calling this video The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly because I think it describes Wrestling Revue to a T. It was good when it was good. It was bad when it was bad, and boy, it got ugly later on throughout the different publishers. And we're going to just touch base on that as we go along. I'll tell you when the magazines were sold to another publisher and when the new issues kicked up. So try to follow along as best as you can. And as a quicker reference, you can always go back to the Wrestling Revue video that we did that were broken up into 4 parts. But this is going to be just like one long one from beginning all the way to the very end. 1959 fall issue, 50 cents out of the gate. Stanley Weston puts the tag team champions of the world, the Graham brothers, which is not considered the tag team championship of the world. It is the United States Tag Team Championship. Every territory had a United States champion, whether it be tag team or their number one title underneath the world title, who was the traveling champion at the time. So it's pretty generic to use the word United States or U.S. or America, American champion, all kind of fall under the same umbrella. But the tag team champions, the Graham brothers, hit the first issue. This is a very sought after issue. It's expensive. If you look back in the 80s, you'll see this for sale for $100. Stanley Weston was selling them for in like the late 70s, early part of the 80s, with just a very few select issues left. And you can get that cheaper now. I've seen them go for $50. I've seen them go for $250. It depends on the condition and whatnot. But I have 3 of these. I had 3. I have, I think, just 2 left. No, I'm sorry. I had 5 of these. I have 2 left. I gave away 3. That's usually what I do, is just kind of give them to people who, didn't have them or couldn't find them. And I gave away more magazines to you guys than who watch these videos than anything else. And I'm glad to do it. I'm glad to help you guys with stuff that, of course, all my doubles. The next issue would be Winter 1960, and it has our world champion on the cover, Lou Thez, and the We're some now roughly 11, 12, probably 10 solid years of the forming of the NWA, and that is the only major publication wrestling company out right now. The AWA is about to break loose and form from their Omaha and Minneapolis territories are going to become now the AWA in this year, and we'll have two. Pretty soon we'll have three. We'll get to that in a minute. And also Skull Murphy on the cover with great shot of Luthez here, man. Well, I mean, talk about an awesome looking cover of the world champion and the real small belts. Boxing belts were that size too, as well, in the early on from the Ring magazine. Actually, I'll show you a double from the Ring magazine award trophy from boxing. It was kind of copied from the same mold. Next issue, Johnny Valentine gets the cover of Summer 1960, and also Gorgeous George, who makes a rare appearance on the cover. George is finished by now, I believe. He wasn't wrestling in the 60s at all, maybe a few spots here or there. I know his son was coming up, and he would also be a manager and whatnot. That was summer of 1960. Fall 1960, the Bastien brothers, and they are now the United States Tag Team Champions of the world, and different style belt here. It's also from a different part of the territory where they were wrestling. So the Graham brothers were champions, and also the Bastiens. Just one more time, the fall of 1960, and the price, like I said, is 50 cents right out of the gate, which was pretty good. If you think about it, 50 cents is pretty awesome for a magazine of this size and thickness and covering all the material and territories that they do. Great looking shot of now Buddy Rogers. So far we've seen all champions on the cover. Johnny Valentine was the Southern Heavyweight Champion of Florida. Not with his belt though, but that was in the same time period when he was champion. So right now we're looking at almost every champion to appear on the Stanley Weston's issues. He was the first guy to bring us these guys with the belts, and guys who are fans with the belt shots like me, that's just a money shot, man. It's just great looking Buddy Rogers shot here with the soon to be WWWF title. This is the NWA US Heavyweight Championship belt. I actually have a few of these. If anyone needs one, let me know. I'll give you one of them. I got 3 of them. I don't need them all. Wrestling Revue, spring of 1961. Looking at Don Leo Jonathan here. I thought this was my signed issue. I must have it on my shelf. Some of the signed issues are mixed in here by accident. I just didn't dig through every piece. So if I'm missing an issue, bear with me. I double checked. I didn't triple check. I usually triple check, but I think I got everything here. I could be missing one. So if I do, I'll write every comment and pin it so you guys know the date and year of it. Don Leo on the cover, and also Pat O'Connor, the former champion. Actually, no, Pat O'Connor is the champion right now. Soon to be losing out to Nature Boy Rogers. Summer of 1961, and my buddy Rocca on the cover. I say buddy because I can't stand him. I never did like him. I couldn't stand him as a wrestler. It was brutal on the announcing with McMahon. Man, it was just so hard to listen to this guy talk, and just drove me nuts when I was a kid. Like, what is he saying? I can't understand him. Fall of 61, we've got Larry the Axe Hennig in a headlock from Pat Patterson in Wrestling Revue, fall 1961. December, Pepper Gomez, longtime U.S. champion out in San Francisco and big time wrestling, dons the cover of the next Wrestling Revue. Not sure if Pepper was the champ here or not. I think so. I know he was battling with the Sheik for that title around 61. Could be. Stanley Weston knocks it out of the park with probably the greatest looking magazine cover of all time, wrestling's TV magazine. Now, up until this point, well, we're going to get into it a little bit as we go on. You'll see how TV Sports becomes the name of the magazine a little bit later on. They always had the TV Sports incorporation. They just didn't use the TV Sports yet. This is more of a photo album of all the wrestlers who appeared on television And you got to remember TV, now this is 61, TV got popular kind of in like mid-50s, and they were black and white. And the only time you got to see your favorite wrestler was on the cover of a magazine in color. And that really brought it to life. It was like, just seeing the internet for the first time, seeing a cover of a magazine. Oh, that's what that guy looks like. Or, oh, wow, that's what that belt looks like. You have no idea the pain unless you've experienced TV through a black and white TV. And sadly enough, through the 70s, I certainly did when I was a kid on my TVs. Great magazine. Another one that costs an arm and a leg. And it was also sold from the back issues from Stanley Weston at one time. I think it was in a $50 range back then, if I remember the old ads or not. I can tell you now, it almost, unless you can find a good cheap one, no one knows what it is. You can get away with it, for under 50 sometimes. But just keep your eye out, and they do pop up. Not often, but they do. Like I said, unless you really want it and don't care, you're into the $100 range with that one. Argentina Apollo, which is another Antonio Rocca or Antonino Rocca. Kind of the same kind of deal, just in a different territory. And this is 1962 February's issue. And also talking about the violent world of Big Bill Miller, who was one of the bigger dudes back then to challenge for all the titles between Verne Gagne, Bruno Sammartino, getting into the masked section when he was a masked champion, and also the doctor because he was a veterinarian. He used his doctor name for a while. April of 1962, the story of Bearcat Wright, and big night at Madison Square Garden here, 1962. Gets the front cover. The Crusher and Fargo get the cover in 1962 June's issue. And it's got kind of a weird background, kind of like what's to come later on in the 80s and 90s when they just photoshopped the background and got rid of, the ring and the crowd and the fans and shit. I hate those backdrops. I like them, much better with an in-action shot or a guy posed. But I hated the Photoshop backs, so I wasn't a fan of these kind of covers with Stanley as he released them. August of 62, Johnny Valentine gets the main shot on the cover. Really darkens in his blue eyes here, man. It really pops out wide in that one. Buddy Rogers back on another cover here, taking on Pepper Gomez as they battle. Also covering some wrestling out in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Freddie Blassie going back and forth in the WWA Los Angeles, NWA Hollywood area, and they are battling. Ricky Dozan takes the title from Freddie Blassie. That is the World Championship down there. That's in Los Angeles. We describe all that stuff in all the other videos and how they split, went on to Dick the Bruiser and whatnot. But the covering of the title changes are in this issue. We go back and forth to Blassie a few times after Carpentier beat Thez for that in 57. Carpentier now on the cover with Buddy Rogers. So speaking of Carpentier, and when I become champion, and he wasn't. Some say he did, some say he didn't. It depends on what company you followed, what magazines you read, and what you were a fan of. But yes, he did hold the world title. It was the Los Angeles version that we just spoke about in the WWA before reestablishing itself with the NWA once again some years later on. Graham Brothers are back on the cover February 1963 into a new year. Now, Stanley Westons were different months. They would go, not every month. I think they had 7, and then they had 4, and then they had 5 one year, then they had 6. It was kind of like up and down. I guess he was still trying to get his feel and get into a rhythm with the magazines. He wouldn't hold Wrestling Revue very long. Another year or so, he'd be getting rid of it and selling it. The Graham Brothers on the cover now, back as the tag team champions. And you can't see it, but they're also wearing their belts here, just like the belts they had on in the very first issue. They have them on here again. Just can't notice it by the way they're sitting. Talking about the Los Angeles territory and the World Championship, the WWA in Los Angeles was the first territory to break from the NWA in 57 and form their own and become their own world champions. And this is their championship belt. Very close to Lou Thesz's championship belt that he had on. There is one difference with it, and I can tell you, if you look back at Thez, you're probably not going to be able to see it, but he has a little bit of a crown at the top, maybe like a 1 inch by a half inch, or 1 inch by 2 inch tall, a little bit of a crown at the very top, and this belt does not. It's a flat top, flat rounded top. That's the difference between the two championship belts. If you were ever wondering, if you ever noticed, or maybe you never knew, yes, there was two different styles of that for each world champion. And this is the Destroyer who took the title and then would eventually drop it to Dick the Bruiser. Dick the Bruiser would take that title form with Wilbur Snyder, and they had Indianapolis World Wrestling Associates, WWA. Controversial magazine. This one is June of 1963. Going back thinking that, is this magazine, or is Stanley Weston in some way responsible for the formation of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation? I don't know. It just had me pondering one day. What had happened was Rogers was the world champion, and he was defending the title predominantly in the Northeast. That's where all the big arenas were, and that's where Rogers was making the most money. So he figured, if I can go to the Garden and make X amount of dollars from my match, why am I going to go to bumfuck wherever, where there's only about 80 people, and make nothing? So the NWA was kind of getting annoyed that McMahon had a grasp of him up here in the Northeast, and we're looking to get the title off of Rogers. Back of McMahon's mind, this is, I'm surmising this, and of course none of us were there, none of us know, but he's probably now thinking at this point, I'm going to break away, kind of like the NWA Los Angeles territory did, and form my own. The title had changed. Rogers loses the title to Lou Thez. It's covered in this issue. Stanley Weston went to Vince McMahon and asked him to hold off and don't write that article, because I'm still going to be booking Rogers as champion in the Northeast. Stanley Weston, told him to go scratch. This is my magazine, and I write what I want. And that led to, I don't know if they ever had a really good friendship, but it led to a complete, destruction between those two, who would never really speak again after that. Stanley went ahead and printed it. The article was in here. The information I just kind of told you was in Bill Apter's book. And speaking of Bill, man, him and I've been trying to pinpoint him and get him down. So I've been working on a few things, and with his help. And the guy's just, I don't know. The guy's an anomaly. I mean, the guy's never stops. The guy's everywhere. He's going to this show, that show, this meeting, that meeting, meeting up with these people to do this kind of a deal, and working on that with the internet. I mean, God bless him. The guy's still running. The guy, I've never seen anyone love professional wrestling more than that guy. And I appreciate all the help that he has been helping me with over the last several months. It's been hard getting him over the holidays and pinned down to help me with a few things that I had in the works. But we're working on it, and hope to get it out there at some point. Just need to get all my T's crossed and I's dotted before I put anything on video. But like I said before, it's coming. It will be working on it it's got to be like a video for Weston and Apter, and how they got started and how this whole thing became what it is now. So look out for that sometime in the future. When Bill slows down, hopefully Bill, slow down, will you, man? August 1963, the Nature Boy on the cover. Also giving you your full color pinup of the Nature Boy in this issue. October 1963, Blood and Broken Bones of Wrestling. Also, Bobo Brazil and Skull Murphy get the small. Maniac Mock Lewin on the cover. Maniac, most likely, this is a tag team match. They also were tag team champions, him and his partner Don Curtis. And Mark has been wrestling a long time, man. He started, in the 50s and worked his way all the way into the 90s, early 90s, and the guy was still in a hell of a good shape, too. Talk about a big guy, strong dude, and never really got much notoriety. Mark Lewin was legit. And this is December of 63, the ending of the year. Moving on to 1964. The Killer gets the cover with Carpentier, and Moolah is taking on Judy Grable in a classic, memorable feud that those two would have over the years and through the 60s and the 70s. Good looking early shot of Killer Kowalski. Killer Kowalski would also hold the WWF Tag Team Championships later on in his future. Don Leo is back on the cover April of 1964, and a good looking posed cover for Don Leo. The Mighty Hercules behind the mask. Unsure who the Mighty Hercules is. Also another shot of Gorgeous George in memory of the Gorgeous One, June of 1964. And now you'll notice the magazines, well, not now, I mean the last couple actually, you'll notice in the far up here on the left-hand corner, it was a CSPC, which was Champion Sports Publication. Champion Sports Publication was what Stanley Weston was calling the magazine's publication at this time, before it was GC London Publishing. So his first company, if you want to call it the first corporation, incorporated publication, was indeed Champion Sports Publication magazine. This will continue on after he sells to the new owners. You'll see that it won't change, and it gets kind of deceiving because people think it's the same people, and it's not. So a couple of your last issues are popping up here. This is the August issue. San Martino and Graham set an attendance record. I actually have the newspaper clippings. Is it back here? No, I should put it back there. Actually, I'm going to put this to the side. I have the newspaper clipping to that from the Daily News in New York here after that match. Freddie Blassie back on the cover now with October of 1964. Pinup of Edouard Carpentier, and magazine continues to the final issue. Wilbur Snyder on the cover to win the World Championship in 65. And they are talking about his World Championship, because in 65 is when he made the purchase from Fred Kohler, and then started the Indianapolis territory after that sale. Also, the Sheik would also make a purchase and also grab the time slot for Detroit from Kohler, as well as the lineage to the NWA United States Championship belt that the Sheik held so many times and for so long for. Two big sprouts offs now. Only they are still affiliated with the NWA. Dick the Bruiser was not, kind of in the middle. He may have went back and forth and worked with the NWA at some point, but I don't believe when he pulled away and did that, he was still an affiliate to the NWA. I'm not sure how that worked. I do have an article with that. I could look that up, and that's kind of curious myself to find that out. But the Sheik did stay with the NWA. It was NWA Detroit, and this is the final issue from Stanley Weston in the Wrestling Revue line. Okay, so Stanley's going to go on, but before I do that, I wanted to show you the first issue under the new owners, which would be Lou Eskin. Lou Eskin takes the magazine. He would later add Norman Keitzer from the Wrestling News to the team, and they would hold the reins for a good number of years here as we go through the 60s. And I will show you when the next change comes. This is Lou Eskin's first issue, and this issue is covering Barbara Baker winning the United States Ladies Championship belt February 1965, as Miss Baker here getting flipped over. And so not to leave Stanley in the wind, he's just gone. Stanley decided to sell the publication and start something else, start fresh. And now that he's going by the new title, GC London Publishing. So his issue that he released in December of 64, he comes right back with, I thought this was January 65. Sorry, this is the wrong, this is February. It's the next issue. I didn't bring them all. I just wanted to show you one or two. Yeah, I do have two. Just wanted to show you one or two of what they looked like. This was called Wrestling Illustrated. Stanley would continue on this for the rest of the years in 1965, throughout the rest of the months, rather. He had also put out a very rare, hard to find, very expensive, if you can find it, photo album #1 from GC London Publishing. This is 1965's edition, and this also cost you $1, which was like, wow, that's double the magazine price. That's like, I can get 2 magazines for that one. No way, you know. So it was mail-in only. You had to send away for it. There wasn't a whole lot of them mass-produced. It wasn't out there for very long. And it is an expensive one. If you can find it, keep an eye out for it. If you're a collector of the older stuff, which I hope you are, it's a pretty cool looking photo album. Very much so like the Buddy Rogers TV one, but a little bit different. Stanley would finish that out. He would have girl wrestling. He would have Wrestling Illustrated, and he would also do a combination of girl wrestling, Wrestling Illustrated for the rest of the year of 65, releasing about 8 issues, and then totally abandoning Wrestling Illustrated until 1979 when it came back as Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I guess one could say that. I mean, who knows if that was really the intention, you know, but it's not really in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated family, but it was, you know, the pre-magazine before that. Stanley started The Wrestler, and this was the newest publication. That would be one of the longest running ones for Stanley till he, actually the longest running magazine that he would own until his retirement and sale. This, you know, was more like a tabloid, more sensationalism, more, you know, popping out at you like ads, and it was a little bit different, a lot different, and I didn't dig it at all in the early ons. The 60s issues really didn't do much for me. I thought Wrestling Reviews, even though they would start going to shit later on with the new publishers, the matches were still good and the articles were still good. It was just, if you're a fan of those color cover shots like I am, we didn't care for these too much, unless you got one kind of like that. Even that's still too busy. A lot different than what Stanley was putting out before. But he will change his ways. He does go back to his older method again in the 1970s, and you know, with the wrestling, Inside Wrestling, Wrestling Sports Review, and whatnot along those lines there. Okay, so we mentioned Lew Eskin's issue #1. Stanley would continue on, and we will not see Stanley again in this video. It's all about Lew Eskin, Norman Keitzer, and Burt Randolph Sugar. Burt Randolph. Most of you should know who he is. If you're a boxing fan or ever watched ESPN, he's the guy with the top hat and the unlit cigar sitting there and giving his analysis on boxing and how this guy was whatever. Some people loved him. Some people thought he was annoying as hell. He was all right. But he ran the magazines, and he also ran a boxing magazine as well. But he doesn't join the crew until much later on. Wrestling Revue now continuing on April of 65, and it's got Wilbur Snyder on the cover with Gene Kiniski. And also the girls at the bottom, Bruno Sammartino and Judy Grable, to name a few. The Graham brothers now, all three, introducing their brother, and now the threesome of the I almost said Freebirds, of the Grahams are on the cover for the first time together. Bruno Sammartino, I'm just trying to make out who Bruno was with there. I can't tell. Another thing I didn't like, they started coloring in the covers rather than using color film when they shot some of the magazines and the magazine covers. Most of them were shot in black and white because it was expensive. And they would do it in black and white and then color it in and stencil it in like they did in the 30s and 40s with boxing magazines, and it's horrible. So a lot of these are going to be like a hybrid color and color in some of these issues, and it was really, really a cheap, low-budget way to go. Stanley Weston really didn't do that. He did some coloring, but not really that to this extent as Wrestling Revue would start doing. It just gave it a really cheap look to it, and it just was unappealing. And go on where, like, you know, the shots like this, and, you know, this is like one of the few, you know, the rest of them, as we dig through them, yeah, mostly all Photoshop backs, and that kind of didn't sell for people. People didn't really like that. It's got Bruno Sammartino against Bill Watts, which was a wild feud up here in the Northeast. And Bruno now is the world champion for the WWF that formed in 1963, back when Stanley Weston printed that article. That was in January. A few months later, McMahon had his own company, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and he was separate from the NWA. And of course, we know he would get back with the NWA. He couldn't use the world title name anymore and would continue on and leave the NWA again. And then finally, when Vince Jr. Took over, everyone was done. So there was no more affiliates. Either you're with him or you die. This was cool. This was autographed by Bruno Sammartino, by the owner before me. He had it signed in pen when he ran up to the ringside and had him sign it. The good old days when you could run up to the ring and shake their hand, or if you're lucky, get something signed. Today they're going to throw you in a prison camp if you go anywhere near the guardrail. It was just a fun time, man. It's just fun stuff that you never see again. Big Bill Miller, as we were talking earlier, with several of his gimmicks now on the cover. And this is October of 1965's issue. He would also team with his brother, the Millers, and they would become tag team champions in a couple territories as well. December of 1965, got an early rare look at Pat Sherry. Pat Sherry was the daughter of the fabulous Moolah, who had a kind of a short career, didn't stick around for too long, but certainly made a few matches over a few years as she was out. Wrestling Revue All-Star TV Review Photo Album #1. This is to be the first one that was put out by Lew Eskin, and it is different than your other TV photo album, with the one with Rogers on the cover. Different as in name because you couldn't really use it, and because of the TV stars and TV sports, it was a conflict of. So I got away with it as close as he could to make it resemble the old one. And they put out 3. This was the first one in '65, and how it has both champions on the cover, Lou Thez and Bruno Sammartino, with their titles. If you look close, also here you'll see the third champion, and that is the Destroyer. And I think we've seen him a little earlier in '63 with that almost same picture with him with the championship belt. So here's your first look now at all 3 world champions, not counting the AWA. They really got hardly any respect from the magazines, especially early on. But now you have 3 what are considered world champions on the cover of a magazine for the very first time. Usually you'll see 1, you hardly see 2, but 3, that was very different. And you won't see that again up until like the 70s when the other magazines start doing that, with all 3 companies being more reputable and noticed. The Sheik gets one of his first early covers on Wrestling Revue. Not first, one of the first, the first for Wrestling Revue. And it is sticking a spike into the throat of his opponent. You really can't see it. It's colored in kind of orange color, but in the magazine you can probably see it better. Also a full pinup of the Crusher, when the Crusher took the AWA Heavyweight Championship belt from Vern Gagne. Fabulous Moolah now gets a bigger front cover as she's taken on, I'm not sure, has shoes on, so it's not Grable. Also, Wilbur Snyder on the cover here as well. April 1966, Wrestling Revue. Bruno Sammartino now gets his famous first magazine cover, posing alone with the World Heavyweight Championship belt for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Great looking cover. This magazine is somewhat hard to find, at least I know it was. And it was kind of expensive for no reason other than it was just hard to find. People don't sell them, or they're just not out there. But if you do see this one, it's Bruno's first major big one, and it's him with the gold. Mark Lewin back on another cover, the Maniac Mark, on August of 1966. Also now getting our first look at ladies champion Mildred Burke. And she would appear on one other magazine from the NWA. It was NWA Official Magazine in '53. And then now this is her first mass consumption magazine out there for her exposure. Also, Batman and Robin. Who would have knew? Batman and Robin were wrestlers. I believe it was Mr. Cruz, right? Mr. Cruz, you told me this was Tony Marino, if I'm correct, if I remember right. I didn't know who that was before. Never really seen much of Tony Marino anyway. I can't recall ever seeing anything with him. But that's who, I don't know who Robin was, but 1966, October, capitalizing off of the very popular television show Batman. And they brought him to the ring. I mean, I guess it was all right. I made it to a cover of a magazine. It was popular in the Pittsburgh area, I guess, and not very long-lived, as you could imagine. But, early gimmicks, man. quite becoming of the 1980s, I would say. A little bit 30 years too soon with that. December 66, big Bob Orton taking on, that's Bob Orton Sr., not Bob Orton Jr., and Eddie Graham battling it out in Florida, I believe. Bruno back on the cover of now another TV All-Star Wrestling Revue photo album. This would be the third album in the Wrestling Revue line, the second under Lew Eskin, and it's got all your favorite stars in full-size glossy paper pinups. These three, that's the second one now, I'm talking under Lew Eskin, are also very expensive. They run for a lot of money, $75 you see them for. It's wild. A lot of times if you're searching, you just type in the word or words in the search bar on eBay, Wrestling Magazine Lot, L-O-T. If you put that in, that's going to pull up every wrestling magazine that's being sold in a lot. Like there's 5 of them or 10 of them or 50 of them, depending on the size of the lot. A lot of times you can strike gold in there because someone doesn't know what they are. They don't give a shit. They just want to get rid of it. So they list all of them up. Here it is. $25 takes the whole thing. And you don't realize it, but holy shit, there's issue number 1 for whatever, and bang, you got it. I was actually, able to score some really cool magazines that way. And it's just shocking. People don't know and really don't give a shit. So you can get lucky by doing that. So try that sometime. You could do lot or lots with an S. Both get you the same amount of searches. Also, by adding an S to the magazine, you can write Wrestling Magazines rather than Wrestling Magazine, and that'll pull up bundles of lots also to pick from. So that might help you out. It certainly helped me out a lot. This is 67, I know that. January 67. The date is not on the cover. Very strange. What a ridiculous looking cover right there. Bobo Brazil looking like a maniac, with gritting his teeth and slamming the dude to the ring apron. Fritz von Erich takes the front cover of the February 1967 issue, and looks like he's in his backyard there somewhere behind a picket fence behind him. Wrestling Revue, March of 67. It's got a little collage of everything. Bill Watts front and center. Killer Kowalski back on the cover once again for April of 1967. I'm just realizing that this is going to be a really long video if I don't start speeding up a little bit and shut my mouth. Back again with Apollo on the cover. Also the Infernos here with their ridiculous looking outfits. That is not what their outfits were. They didn't have green, orange, and red. They just colored that, didn't make it pop more. Getting into some of my roached issues, I had about 6 or 8 of them that, or in 1967 and 8, that are just really bad shape. But I don't care. I've had them forever, and that's became the way it is, and I love it for what it is. The beat up, messed up way it is. It gives it that old look that just takes me back to flipping through this when I had no appreciation of it. I would just throw it around and didn't give a shit, but kept my other ones really nice because I wasn't too familiar with the 60s wrestling when I was a kid so much. I was more into, 78, 79, 80, and these I just bounced around, but kind of wishing I took better care of them. But I'm certainly not going to get rid of them or upgrade them because I like them for that style that they bring, the old beat up 60s magazine. It just has that rustic look that it should have. Bruno on the cover once again, close-up shot. Also, another magazine that's with Bruno. It's hard to find, and I thought this was signed. Oh, it is signed on the bottom. Okay, this is one of from my signed issues. Gotta put that over that side so I don't mix them up. September of '67, and Graham is. You know what? I'm not sure who that is. I wanted to say Graham, but now that I'm looking at his boots, I don't think that is Graham. I'm not sure. What a horrible cover. I mean, he's got green hair, brown hair, mixed in with some horrible blood that's painted. You can see some of it's real, but some of it's colored in. Man, what a ridiculous cover. Way to go cheap on that one. Fabulous Moolah on the cover now of October 1967, and Professor Tanaka also gets the corner shot. Mighty Igor defeats Maurice Mad Dog Fashon for the heavyweight championship of the world in the AWA. It's covered in this issue here. Guillotine Gordon looking mean and nasty as only he can with those razor sharp pork chop sideburns and the sweaty long hair, especially when he bled. It was a pretty good sight, pretty scary sight to see. Harley Race and his tag team partner, Larry the Axe Hennig, capture the AWA Tag Team Championship of the World. Here's Harley on his first posed magazine cover. I did make a post on the other video, but I thought this was Harley's first magazine. This is actually his second. This is his first posed. He was on another issue beforehand, but during a match, and it was an in-action shot, and I didn't know it was him. All these years have passed me by. So this is his first posed in the studio. You can tell by the curtain in the background. The AWA was using a small studio at this point, for most of their recordings. In this December 1967 issue of Larry the Axe and Harley. And here is your third and final TV, I keep saying TV sports, TV All-Star Wrestling Revue album. This is the final one, and also another expensive one. Same kind of deal, same as the other three that Eskin did and the one that Weston did. Moving up to a new year, January 1968 on the cover, and we've got, we'll talk about one of the Andersons. I'm trying to see where the name, it's their, the Andersons on top. I know it, you know how you know it's the Andersons, right? The diehards know. They know right here by looking at that. And it's funny because I was looking at that other issue and I didn't know who it was. And I thought I noticed stripes going down here. And that would be telling me that that was Anderson, but not in the face, not at all. I don't know. Yeah, this is definitely one of the Anderson brothers, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, popularly known in the central middle part of the 80s here, January of 1968, biting the head and bleeding out. Also introducing Ox Baker. Ox Baker started out with hair, actually, and clean shaven. Didn't look anything like what he would become later on. Crazy Luke, now the next brother from the Grahams, the fourth, and or third rather. What was he? Crazy Luke was the third. Superstar was the fourth. February 1968, and he gets a title shot against San Martino. Again, another shitty background with the color. It's a little bit better than some of the others, but not that great. This is much more like it. You see the ring, you see the crowd in the background, you see the facial expressions on the people. You're really captured into the moment now. You see this encapsulated picture for the rest of its eternity on this cover, and that's the shot. And when you see something like this, it's just like looking at a picture. It's like, it doesn't really say much, two guys, but here, it puts it in its proper perspective. You get a better visual on the match because let's face it, when we were never going to see these matches. They were already over with. They weren't recorded. So these became the matches of our imagination. And a lot of times, our imagination gave us way better matches than some of the actual matches. And then same goes for the wrestler. We had to imagine what they actually looked like when they walked, when they moved. We had no idea other than just their picture, and most of the time it was black and white, unless they hit the cover. So it was, a difficult time. And to find information, you wanted the information? Your internet is right here. Every one of these issues are telling you everything that I tell you. I don't know shit. I don't know nothing. I'm not a historian. I don't know, one thing from the other. I just know what I read and what I'm telling you. And that's how we keep it here. Keeping it, I guess, if you want to say kayfabe. But yeah, that's the only, there's no other way. There was no other wrestling exists to me other than the real pro wrestling, the kayfabe wrestling. And everything else is just, a show, acrobatics, whatever you want to call it. Soap opera. Good looking shot, missed opportunity. Waldo Von Erich, man, and I was a fan of Waldo, still am. I have his best of on DVD with some of his great matches from the 70s. He's a United States heavyweight champion here. They cut it off. You can't see it, but they cut it off. You can probably see United States there at the top, but missed opportunity for the U.S. belt to be featured again. Not since Buddy Rogers had it. Has the belt been on the cover? Of course, there's different versions, like I explained earlier. It could have been. It's a different version of it. The Fabulous Kangaroos hit the cover of May 1968. There was a few different versions of the Kangaroos, and probably the worst looking magazine cover of all time. What is this? Is this some ballerina dude? I don't know. I say that because look at his shoes. What is that? certainly doesn't scream wrestling, right? I don't know. It looks more like a cheesy soul album, a record album from the '60s from your favorite soul band. I don't know what the hell that is. It's ridiculous. June of 1968. It killed me to have to buy it, but that can't stop me from owning every issue. I had to get it. That's the other part of being a collector like me who wants to own everything and not just some of it. You got to buy a lot of shitty stuff you don't want, but the goal isn't just wanting it. It's the completion part of having it and documenting it and preserving it, and that's what I wanted to do, and that was the whole reason behind all that. So a lot of these issues I really was painful to pull the trigger on, believe me. July 1968, Carpentier takes the cover, still flying high, and a good looking shot again at the Destroyer, who's back on another cover in August of '68, before he would spend most of his time in Japan and make his home pretty much out there for the remainder of the 70s and 80s. Back and forth to Los Angeles, of course, a lot. The Von Brauners, the tag team champions, you're looking at the Amarillo, Funk Territory, Texas, United States Tag Team Champions, and the championship belts right there of the Von Brauners. They would hold more championship belts than anyone, 35 tag team titles and 5 regional solo titles between the two of them. What a marked history they got, and they're never talked about. They held titles everywhere. Brutal German tag team. October of '68, and one of my more roached out videos or magazines. Man, this is pretty destroyed. But like I said, Whipper Watson's on the cover. I can't look at Whipper any other way but that way. Bruno gets a cool looking cover November of '68 with the championship belt, and Bruno wins the popularity once again. Earl Maynard is on the cover of December of '68, and talking about a Moondog Mayne and Maniac Matt Bourne, Bourne Senior, Tough Tony Bourne, on the cover of December of 1968. That's Matt Bourne's father. Also Doink the Clown, his father. Doink the Clown. That could have worked if they really fucking did something with that. I thought ECW was going to make that work really good, but they let it go. Jose Lothario, mainstay in Texas, iconic career in Texas, holding titles everywhere throughout Texas, from the Brass Knucks to the United States to America's title, the tag team titles. Jose, go on to also be a trainer and train several guys along their career. And January of '68 showing Jose for his first time. Also Len Rossi, a Pride of Dixie. We're going to talk about him in a minute with his tag team partner, who pretty much wrestled throughout the Delta region, Tennessee, Arkansas, up and down Alabama and Knoxville, and here all in between. Bruno and Gorilla Monsoon get the main shot here, kind of overshadowed by Ray Stevens. It's I was going to say something about that, but I forget it. Take up too much time. I'm talking too much as it is. March of '69, while Bill Watts takes the cover, and Spudnik Monroe takes the cover of '69 of April. Also, Cora Combs on the bottom. Also have a daughter wrestle later on. Hawk and Hansen get the. Here's your first look at the NWA Mid-Atlantic United States Tag Team Champions, and that's their belts. They're early on Mid-Atlantic Tag Team title holders, which follow the different lineage through all the way through the NWA World titles later on. Of course, they all have their offshoots, but that same lineage there with the Hawk and Hansen. Spudnik Monroe, you can always tell him by the tattoos. He has a couple on his arms too, you just can't see them. And also by his wild hair. He always had a goofy haircut. I'm trying to fix this cam. And he can't really tell here, but it's shaved on the sides. It's real long on the top. He would dye half of it blonde, the other half of it black. Pretty kooky dude. Hiro Matsuda would be long time relations with Florida, Championship Wrestling from Florida, Bill Watts, Cowboy Luttrell, and of course, tag team champions in his younger years with Antonio Inoki. Pretty much, like I said, NWA Florida was basically where he would spend most of his time later on, especially after he retired, and would make TV appearances. But if I'm not wrong, I believe he went on Ted Turner's network there and did something in the late 80s, I think, with Flair. I might be wrong about that. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Hiro Matsuda. Dory Funk Jr., new champion of the world, takes the crown. Dory Funk now on the cover with the championship belt. And remember, I was telling you how they color it in, and the belt is not red. They colored that in red. Horrible. It must have been really blurred and shitty, and they just wanted to fill it in the best they could, I guess, because what other reason would you have to do that? But it covers Dory's championship title win. Hold that belt for another couple of years. And Guillotine Gordon, once again, gets the main center shot. Look at those mean-looking eyes, the pork chops, and the dyed blonde golden hair there of Guillotine Gordon. Kind of a mess on the cover here, talking about Don Leo Jonathan, George Murphy, and Gene Kiniski. Gene Kiniski, of course, is losing the title, and Blackjack Lanza on the cover here, August of 1968. A mess of a cover, and it's even got some marker written all over it. Again, this coming out of the 60s now. This is like from here on, all my magazines go back to being mint again. But these early 60 ones are pretty rough. This is October of 69. Boy Scout Jay Scarpa, also known as Chief Jay Strombo later on, and here he is on the cover. I believe it's Lord Alfred Hayes, if I remember the article right, but a bloody Chief Jay before the Indian gimmick. Len Rossi, we mentioned a little bit earlier, and his tag team partner, Mr. Brown, and these two would take the tag team championships in Memphis. The Rossi and Brown team broke down the racial boundaries, bringing the first time that a black guy and a white guy would become a mixed-race tag team champions. Wrestling in a predominantly segregated sections of the country of the United States, where at one time a black guy wasn't even allowed to wrestle a white guy, or you wrestled in an arena that a black guy wasn't even allowed to be into that arena because he was black. Really some fucking ridiculous shit. But these two had the balls to come out and be among the first. I mentioned a lot of this in the ladies video, the ladies magazine video that we did. Same thing, how they broke down the barrier. Marva Scott and her family. No different here. These two would go on to hold tag team championships. They were red hot. They were, I think, 6 times tag team champions throughout the Delta. And pretty cool, pretty iconic too. The only magazine cover you'll see those two on with the championship belts there. And good for them for having the balls to stand up for what the fuck was right. January of 1970, another look at Mr. Valentine. The Convict makes his appearance on the cover, and there was a few different convicts. There was a few different gimmicks with that, and there was one in the 60s, one in the 70s, and then one like early 70s, one up in the mid part of the 70s, around 75 as well. Also a young look at Wahoo, early look at Wahoo McDaniel here, former football player. And I have also some cool articles with him when he was a Jet, and he was making the crossover to wrestling full time, and went on to say how much more money he made wrestling compared to the NFL. It was like night and day. He says he's not even coming back to the NFL. Had a little run in New York, got some press, and that's where I got the article from. And then was a mainstay throughout the country in the NWA territories, that's for sure. Rookie of the Year, John L. Sullivan, not the boxer John L. Sullivan. We're talking about Luscious Johnny Valiant Sullivan. Early look at Luscious Johnny V before he came one of the Valiant brothers, coming out here as John L. Sullivan with his short stay with this. It wouldn't be very long. And a couple of years from now, he will be in the World Wrestling Federation, and he'd be tag team champions with his brother, Jimmy, and then later on, Jimmy, Johnny, and Jerry. April 1970, the San Martino Ivan Koloff feud well underway. and you're soon to be looking at the man who takes the title from Bruno in just less than a year, a few short months away from this. And good looking in action pose of the two. Ivan, of course, being the the future champion just to come, and he would never be on a cover as champion, which is a shame. Most of the time, you didn't see the heels get the magazine covers from the WWF because it changed hands so damn fast. It wasn't even time. Sometimes a week or 2 weeks go by, and then there's a new champion already. And with the lag time of the magazines being like 4 months to 3 months, it was already past the point. Wrestling Revue, May of 1970, and it's got Fritz with the giant claw, savage look of Ray Stevens, June of 1970. Funk on the cover here, taking on, this is July of 1970, and Funk defending his world title. Also a special feature on Fashawn and the AWA championship, Vern winning it back. And 1970, it talks about Vern, the other champion, meaning like it's kind of a knock against him, I would think. I mean, this is your first look at an AWA champion on the cover with the belt, and they are finally acknowledging the company that's been around for about 7 years, or no, almost 10 years now, and finally making it to a cover and getting recognized. The article inside goes on to kind of like bash them a little bit too. They really weren't getting much love out of this article, if I remember if this is the correct one. Either that or Wrestling World. I believe it's this one that talks about that. Wrestling World had a very similar article about Vern and the AWA belt as well. Wrestling Revue, September 1970, and I gotta speed up just a little bit before this is a 9-hour video. Jesus. October 1970, Dick the Bruiser with his championship belt from the WWA and Indy. Gorgeous George Jr. Gets the front cover of Wrestling Revue, November 1970. Dr. X gets the cover on the middle here, along with Donna Cristatello, who would be a longtime ladies tag team champion for the NWA, Tojo Yamamoto, Victor Rivera, Bill Watts, and Randy Curtis. Bill Apter, before he was with London Publishing and Stanley Weston, he wrote an article as a fan to Lew Eskin and most likely Norman Keitzer. Norman Keitzer jumps aboard here really soon somewhere. I forget the exact date, but he would also join the team with Lew Eskin, and they would both be the higher-ups with the company. So he sent in an article. They printed the article with Bill's pictures, and he was credited, but he never got paid for it. That's also in his book. And this actually was given to me by my friend Bud Carson as a gift, and he wrote this on here, Bill Apter's first publishing with them on the Mongols. I just never took it off. It's like a little post-it sticker. But this was Bill's first article before anything published in GC London. This is January 71. Bill didn't have anything published until like 71 or 2 I believe the issue was an Inside Wrestling was the first time Bill was credited. These are the things I'm trying to nail down with him when I get him some of the questions that I got to make sure I get my facts straight on. And I'm really jarring his brain with questions that he's never even thought of. He's like, man, no one's ever asked me shit like that before. But as a magazine collector, I find that stuff interesting, as somebody else may not. But I'm obsessed with the magazines and how things ran and what the office looked like and what was your day like and who was this guy like and how was this dude. It's shit that nobody really cares about. So these are the kind of questions I'm trying to pin down from him. Things that weren't covered in his book that I would have liked to have known. February 1971. The Vampire, Freddie Blassie, March 1971, taking a chunk out of John Tolos' head in a dog collar match, both of them with the collars around the neck. April 1971, got to look at Bobby Shane, the All-American Boy. Bob Backlund before Bob Backlund, maybe. Who knows what his career could have been. Man, he was a great heel. I never got to see him wrestle, only on some years later on the DVD. And the triple and fourth generation shit just doesn't cut it. I've searched on YouTube years ago. I haven't looked recently, but there's never anything with him on it substantial, and would have loved to have seen him wrestle for sure, and just never got the chance. And he would have been somebody special, I'm guaranteed. You just seen how the magazines catered to him early on, and if he didn't get killed in that plane crash, man, who knows where he could have went. who else? Austin Idol was in that with him. Buddy Colt, I believe, was also. I think he was the pilot, Buddy Colt. May of 1971, Pedro Morales with the old WWWF United States Heavyweight Championship belt. This is your first look at the WWF's United States belt on the cover of a magazine. Many people didn't even know that this was in existence. It was left over from the United States time, from the NWA years, as their number one territory belt under the world champion, and they kept it going. Pedro was a champ. They say Bobo Brazil was, but he was the Sheik's United States champion, and he would wear the Sheik's United States championship belt to the WWWF. So they kind of used them both, and the history of that's kind of weird. They all kind of worked together at one point. And on the cover now, Boris Malenko with the championship belt. This is most likely in Florida. I never knew. This is throwing me off because I'm looking at this tag here. I never noticed I had that on there. That's weird. All these years of having it, I never even thought of. You know what? That's another shitty thing that magazines used to do. Now that I see this, they would take the magazine cover and they would put your fucking sticker right here and mail it. Sometimes they go right across the face of somebody and destroy the entire magazine. Because that glue was like cement, man. That ain't coming off. I mean, you could do little things to get it off, but you're going to screw the magazine up predominantly, especially if it's across the face. It's going to be screwed up, man. That used to piss me off to no end. And that is when I stopped the subscriptions from London Publishing, when they started doing that, when the new owners took over. I mean, I stopped a little bit before that, but I did keep The Wrestler going for a little while. And I was like, I'm done with them. They used to put it in a manila envelope and then mail it out to you with a little bit of backing, not much. But never sticking it across the magazine. For fans like us, man, it really sucks. And getting it off's a real bitch. Blackjack Mulligan hits his first cover of Wrestling Revue in July of 1971. Pedro Morales doing a dive on Dick Bulldog Brower. The next champ, Johnny Powers, dyes his hair back to his normal color from the bleach blonde, and now is the North American heavyweight champion in the NWF with Pedro Martinez, which was soon to be losing this title as well as the heavyweight title to Antonio Inoki, and that would be forming the NWF in New Japan Pro Wrestling. All that's covered in depth on our other videos as well. The war with Jack Briscoe and Funk on this horrible looking cover in 1971 October. Just, very unappealing, lousy looking cover. Johnny Valentine taking the cover. V is for Violent Valentine, November 1971. Vachon's capture titles in Japan across the top. LA's Super Show, Los Angeles Wrestling Revue of December 1970, and Waldo Von Erich has the claw hold on Pedro Morales in between his mouth, his chin, and his eyes. More what we call in jiu-jitsu the bowling ball, where your fingers go through the eyes and your thumb goes through the mouth. Pretty painful carnival hold there, if you don't get your finger bit off in the process. January 1972, Dominic DeNucci, thankfully his only magazine cover ever that he would appear on for Wrestling Revue. He wasn't on many covers, maybe one or two. I never liked Dominic DeNucci at all. I just was not a fan. It was just lackluster, clumsy, big, kind of like a Tex McKenzie, just not as skinny. And honestly, no disrespect, I just wasn't a fan of him at all. And if it wasn't for Bruno's coattails, I don't think he would have been around as long as he was, but just my opinion. But a good trainer from what I understand. A lot of guys trained with him, and a lot of them became superstars thanks to him. February 1972, we're talking about Bobo Brazil and the United States Championship belt, and here it is from his win over the Sheik. Like I said, he would also wear that into the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Pedro Morales is the NWA Los Angeles America's Heavyweight champion. And here is an early shot. This is also signed by Funk, yeah. March of 1972. This picture of Funk was in his rookie season somewhere in 66 or 67, something like that. Really young, early shot of Terry with the bleach blonde hair. Not many people get to see that photo there of Terry with the blonde hair. And I guess I got two. I didn't go through all these, so yeah, some of them might be repeated, so just bear with me. There's just the ones that I haven't given away yet, I guess. April of 1972, got the Destroyer on the cover, as he is the American heavyweight champion, and this is going to carry him over to All Japan, as All Japan forms in the next year under the Giant Baba, and the Destroyer would have a long tenure with the All Japan crew and become an icon there. One of the biggest Americans to come out of Japan, that's for sure. Chief J now drops the Scarpa Act, and here he is as an Indian, and no one knew the difference. Cowboy Bill Watts with the North American Heavyweight Championship belt around his waist. This would be the Mid-South territory with Watts, Oklahoma, parts of Texas, and whatnot. Good looking shot of Cowboy with the title. Bloodbath in Toronto. I watched this match not too long ago, actually, with Bulldog Brower taking on the Sheik up in Toronto. And the Germans on the cover once again here in July of 1972. Pampero Firpo also on the cover, and Johnny Eagle invades America. New tag team champions, and also making now his first magazine cover, Nick Bockwinkel, before he would capture the world title from Verne in 75, with his tag team partner, Ray the Crippler Stevens. Also Rene Goulet, who was known as, more of a jobber guy for the 80s people, but he was one of the very first Worldwide Wrestling Federation tag team champions with Karl Gotch. He would hold several titles, also throughout Dick the Bruiser's territory, and he was no slouch in his younger years. As for his career, for most of us that knew him, but just like, oh, he's like Johnny Rods, he doesn't win. But no, the guy was good. September 1972 with Victor Rivera takes the cover. Ernie Ladd wins the NWF Heavyweight Championship belt. He defeats Waldo Von Erich for the title, who was the champion in the NWF, Pedro Martinez's territory, between the Pittsburgh loosely, but Cleveland and Detroit loosely, as well as New York and parts of Pennsylvania was the territory. For more in-depth, check out the NWF territory video. That's a long one as well. It's got all the information on how that formed and how it disbanded and how they went on for their future for the NWF. Pretty interesting video there. A lot of the guys seem to like that one. November 72, big old Bruno still number one. Dr. X gets the cover of December of 1972. And who is the mystical Dr. X? There would be several throughout the years. He would also become a world champion, Omaha version of the AWA, as well as the AWA World Heavyweight Championship belt. And that is also the Destroyer under a different mask. For those who don't know, most of you all know. This issue here, Harley Race, this is now your first issue with, what's his name? Oh, Christ. It's Lou Eskin, and I believe it's Norman Keitzer's first official position with the magazine company. I knew he's with Wrestling News, and he would have his hands also in several different independent contracting deals he had with other magazines. But he went on to the team with Wrestling Revue in this issue. It's either this one or the next one, either way. But this has a good story on the Dr. X, Dr. X1, Dr. X2, and also Dr. X3. There was actually three of them, and it explains who they all were and what's going on. The article's pretty cool. Harley Race here is now the Central States heavyweight champion, which will soon become the NWA United States Championship, following that lineage here, Harley being the first. For those who know what I'm talking about with Harley, he's not pictured with the U.S. belt. This was the Central States belt. He has this belt representing that, which would become, the U.S. belt a little bit later on. But he's not pictured with that. I'm talking about the belt with the map, with like the United States, like the Sheik had that United States belt. Wrestling Revue puts out its first annual in 1973, and it's got Wrestler of the Year, Danny Hodge. Danny Hodge, now the first wrestler to be featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Hulk Hogan seems to capture that title by the people, and just a little research would tell you how untrue that is. He's not the first wrestler on the cover. Danny Hodge is, and he was in 1950 something or other. I have it down there somewhere. April 73, Danny with the Junior Heavyweight Championship belt. Now I should say this: he's on the cover as the champion, but as a a college wrestler or non-professional wrestler, I should say. So he wasn't featured there as a pro wrestler. So Hulk Hogan could have been, I guess, but Andre the Giant was the first one in it because he was in it in I show it in one of the videos not too long ago. I can't remember what issue it was. 80, 81, something like that. And I'm not talking about the beer ad with his hand covering the can. I'm talking about an actual match against Sergeant Slaughter for those who've seen that video. May of 1973, Pedro Morales on the cover, as well as another champion as in Paul Christie. Paul Christie, we mentioned him a little bit on the Randy Savage video and how monumental he was to getting Macho careers off the ground here. And was it Miss Bunny? Miss Bunny Love was his valet, having the woman with him, kind of like the same as Macho Man, having Elizabeth. Kind of took that right from Mr. Christie himself. I think that was her name, Bunny Love, right? I'm sure Ernie will tell me fucking whatever I miss out on in the 60s and early 70s. My man is right there with the info. That's another thing I love about you guys too, man, because it's not about me. It's not about the magazines and what I know. It's about all of us getting together to see something we haven't seen before. It's about us learning, different things that we didn't know about from your comments because of you sharing your experiences with everybody. So this is more than just a YouTube channel. We're kind of like a little social media family, kind of. I mean, we're all cool. We don't act like assholes. Anyone insults anybody, they're just gone. And I think I've only had to get rid of like 2 people just for being a douche. And that's usually, the younger, immature douches that like wrestling today or just some jealous schmuck. But by and large, you guys have been great. And I love when you share your experiences, man. All you guys from Pittsburgh to Australia to the UK, all your experiences are welcome and shared and appreciated very much. And I always do my very, very best to comment back to everybody. I don't think I missed too many. I mean, there probably is, and it's not because I never noticed it. But I will always acknowledge you and thank you for taking your time to make a comment and a compliment about the video. And that's just how we do it, man. Just trying to be cool and be friendly, and not some egotistical hierarchy channel that pushing my products and I'm selling this and that. It's just about us. It's us to relive and get nostalgic for a time that's long gone that'll never be back for us anyway. As most of us are, knocking on our older years' door, wrestling, we'll never see it like that. So we got to stay here and relive this shit here. September 73, Killer Kowalski on the cover. Dory Funk Sr., the father of Terry, and Dory gets the pick in the Amarillo, Texas, on the farm. Now, taking a look at all 3 world champions for the first time since we've seen it with the Destroyer, Bruno and Lou Thez. Vern Gagne, the AWA champion. Pedro Morales, the WWWF and the National Wrestling Alliance world champion. Jack Briscoe. The Garvin brothers make their appearance, North American Tag Team Champions. The Garvins, that's young, gorgeous Jimmy Garvin with blonde hair. The other 2 aren't really worth mentioning. February of 1973. And also getting your first look at the Texas Outlaws, Dirty Dusty Rhodes, Dirty Dick Murdoch. That was their names of both. Dirty was the beginning for Dusty before he became the American Dream and a good guy. He was a bad guy with pretty much Florida and Bill Watts' territory there in Mid-South. And then, of course, Dusty would stay in Florida for most of his career. December, Andre the Giant, December 73 with Carpentier. Carpentier likes to take the credit for discovering Andre the Giant and making him who he is, but he's had a career that already started several years before. I think this is the article where Carpentier says, I was driving down the countryside road one day. I seen this big guy walking with a tree limb in his shoulder and an axe in another one. And I said, wow, this guy has to be a wrestler. I got to bring this guy into the business. And that's how Andre got his start. And of course, it's a bullshit story, but funny to listen to if you wanted to check that issue out. Penny Banner, horrible looking cover, looks more like a country and western cover than anything else. It's Penny Banner, the ladies AWA world champion, who doesn't get a whole lot of credit throughout the magazines, but she also she held several different titles, but the main title was the AWA world title. And here she is on her horse. It could have been a lot better. You could have put a cover like this on, like they did here, but whatever. It is what it is. February of 1974, Vivienne Vachon, the sister of the three Vachon brothers. That's right, three. Those of you who remember the third brother, he wasn't a third brother for very long. Vivienne on the cover here, looking pretty cool, posing for the Queen of Wrestling. That's the Queen of Wrestling movie that they put out. At one time, it was on YouTube for free. It might still be on there. It's a great time capsule into the early 70s wrestling for sure, before the I Like to Hurt People video with the Sheik. Messy cover here on the April 1974. I like this issue for the reason they have Johnny Valentine with the U.S. title belt around his waist, and that is hard to find. If I had more time, I would show you, but I got to get cooking here. This is going to be long. May of 1974, Mil Mascaras hits the main cover. The fabulous Moolah gets the shot with her championship belt over her shoulder. This is the United States Championship belt. It's red, white, and blue, and you just can't see it right there at this angle, the way she's holding it. But she is the U.S. champ as well as the women's world champ. She would hold both. She would lose to Ann Casey. She would drop another one to Joyce Grable and a tag team belt. She held a tag team belt several times. That is Moolah. Pampiro Firpo gets the cover of July 74. Pampiro, the man responsible for giving Macho Man Savage his voice. At least that's what was said. Macho wanted to imitate his voice, oh yeah, kind of thing. That's how Pampiro spoke. You look it up, you hear a couple of his old interviews, you'll hear it as I say that if you didn't know that already. The beautiful Laura Del Rio, sister to Mil Mascaras and Dos Caras, his brother, and Isaac Hidalgo, the third brother of the Mascaras. They had a sister, Laura. She's on a couple of magazine covers, not much, not a lot of information about Miss Del Rio here. Very attractive looking ladies champion. This belt here is discussed in the ladies video, and that title lineage from Mildred Burke would go on to Japan, where it is still in existence today in All Japan Lady Pro Wrestling. That's also a nice long video too of the lady wrestling. That's really popular for some reason. It was like 10,000 views on that, which are, almost had a heart attack. I'm like, holy Christ, 10,000 people. Which, it's not a lot for the average channel, but for, a little shit channel like this, it is certainly a lot for me. I thought I'd have 10 people watching them. So September 74, Briscoe on the cover as champion. Looks more like a newspaper. This one too. Don Leo goes after Bruno's WWWF heavyweight title. I would have loved to have seen that match. Too bad things weren't recorded back then. The Sheik now in 1974, November. And what a crappy looking cover, especially this one here. You know what? Did we? Yes, we moved on. I'm sorry. We had a new owner took over the magazines at this point. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I passed we'll skip it. I'll put a note in there for the title. I'll drop a pin and let you know when the magazine changed. I just got talking and skipped it. December 1974. These are, going to really start to hit rock bottom now. We're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, we've seen some ugly ones in the 60s. But, there's some really ugly ones here with February 75. The magazine kind of dropped. You can notice that they cut the size down. It's smaller width-wise, lengthwise, and the magazines itself just don't look like this should look. Briscoe and Funk in Canada. Wrestling Revue in April of '75, but they stooped so low and try to capitalize on the apartment house women wrestling that they just got a couple of girls in bikinis to pose and put fake blood on their face. This isn't the real legit apartment wrestling like Stanley Weston gave us. I mean, this is the fake stuff. The Sheik and Don Leo getting the spike into the forehead, also covering the loss of Bobby Shane, who was killed. His article and the accident from the flight is in this issue here of June '75. Another posed nothing apartment house girl wrestling magazine. Although these girls have wrestling boots on, which kind of led me to believe that they really could have been an actual match. Just posed, obviously. But also Humperdinck gets the cover and a bloody shot of Bobby Duncombe challenging Bruno. Crazy Luke Graham dominates the cover. Johnny Valentine and Superstar Billy battle in October of '75. The California champion Pat Patterson looking all sweet with the glasses and hat and the pink. Written below here, Oxbaker talking about how he killed a man in the ring. Mr. Torres, one of the Torres brothers, was one of the men he kayfabe killed, along with Gunkel from the Georgia Territory wrestler and promoter. Both of them. I mean, of course, Gunkel had a heart attack. He didn't really get killed, but they used that for the storyline. February 1976, Bulldog Brower battling with Big Cat Ernie Ladd in the IWA, just before Ernie Ladd was about to turn heel shortly after that match. Bruno Sammartino shares a pinup with a girl, with a cover with the girl in a bikini. Good looking shot of Bruno with the championship belt. The Funk brothers take a smaller picture, Superstar Graham even smaller, to the bikini-clad beach girl. And yet another one, just some average ladies taking some pictures. Looks like she's in the desert somewhere. Antonio Inoki and the Ali debacle is mentioned, and the build-up for the August '76 issue. Another one here, another mess of a cover, talking about Larry Hennig and Dusty Rhodes on the cover here. It's not. This is, I believe that's Malenko on the bottom there, October of 1976. Paul Jones battling for the U.S. title with Johnny Valentine, December 1976. February 1976, Wrestling Revue. Another, kind of a nothing cover. All these are really starting to look pretty bad at this point. Sales, I'm sure, are dropping. They put Nick Bockwinkel on the cover as the world champion. And here's your first look at Nick. Even before the Weston issues, that was your first shot at Nick with the belt. Ken Patera in the WWF, now brought in by Captain Lou. He'll be back again later with the Grand Wiz and capture the Intercontinental Championship from Pat Patterson in a couple of short years. But right now, he's just with Captain Lou battling Bruno. Big feud between Paul Jones and the Nature Boy Ric Flair. They had a couple of tremendous bloody matches, and that match, this one here, will be featured on 5 different magazine covers, all in different years, between 77 and 79. October of 1977, Mr. I believe it's Bob Roop on the cover here. October of 1977, as well as Freddie Blassie on the bottom. Superstar Billy, now the Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion. Is Superstar Graham going to be plagued by the jinx of the WWWF title? For those of you who don't know what that jinx is can anyone become champion longer than a week after losing the belt? Superstar, has not a very tough task. If he can hang on to it for a little bit longer than 9 days, then he'll have broken the jinx of the having the title shortest as a heel. And of course, he holds it for almost 10 months. And early shot of Superstar, December 1977. Ernie the Cat Ladd, who was also tag team partners with Superstar as well as Ivan Koloff over the years too. A lot in Japan as well. Remember the mystery arena that I couldn't remember. I didn't know the name, and I asked you guys a few times if anybody recalls it. I found out what it was. It's in Modesto, California, at a place called the Uptown Arena, and they had upwards to, I think it was 4,000 matches there between the 40s up through the mid 70s, and also had boxing there as well. Always wondered what this place was with the rafters so low. It looks like they're going to bang their head on it. I always just assumed that it was Canada. Excuse me. I always assumed it was Canada, but I mean, close enough. Northern California. I mean, it was up there. But Wrestling Revue, Wrestling Guide, Big Book of Wrestling, all covered that, and that's, of course, they're up in Canada now too. The magazine have moved from New York to Canada, so it's a little bit more accessible, being in the greater Northwest. And speaking of Canada, this is Killer Kowalski with the Pacific Coast Tag or Heavyweight Championship belt in Canada, April 1976, and this was one other issue before that. What I thought, but. Okay, I thought he was a tag team champion here, making sure this was his heavyweight, and yes, that's the heavyweight belt. Try not to battle the glare here. I'm getting tough with the background, so I'll try to do my best to keep the glare out. I know it sucks. June of 1978, and it's got Fuji and Tanaka, the tag team champions. Fuji and Tanaka, but this is under Freddie Blassie. They would also win the tag team titles under the Grand Wizard some years later on. Another published cover with Albano and Ken Patera, which could have been a better looking cover, but it's a lot better than some of the ones that they've been putting out, man, because they've been pretty bad. October of 78, Dusty battling in the bull rope around his throat, Terry Funk. The two, of course, would have iconic battles over the years, even towards the end of both their careers in 2003 or 2004. I read they were having a chain match in Philly at the Electric Factory. I was like, holy shit. I mean, any of you who know what the Electric Factory is in Philly, it was just basically a bar that hold a few thousand people that played metal bands, and kind of a weird place. I couldn't imagine how they had that set up there for wrestling at the Electric Factory. December 1978, Wrestling Revue. February 79, Judo Jacket. April 79, with Mr. Kern in the golf cart. Bruno taking on Superstar, June 79. August, talking about the new champion, Bob Backlund, and how he would be facing, in a rematch, Harley Race in a title versus title. No story about Backlund taking the title, only about him some years later getting ready to wrestle Harley. October 79, with the Bulldog getting the main cover, and Wrestling Revue is about to get sold once again. December of 1979 on this cover here, and this is the final issue under the Canadian. They would come back. I'm not sure of the publisher's name. There was a couple of different ones, and one moved up from editor to publisher, but we moved to Canada. Like I said, the magazine size got cut down and went to way cheaper. It would go back into the hands of Norman Keitzer once again from the Wrestling News. He would acquire Wrestling Revue as well as the Rings magazine. From Burt Randolph Sugar. Burt Randolph Sugar also had a big hand in Wrestling Revue, which I failed to mention before. He took it over in like the early 70s. That was the issue I was talking about that I said I'll post a pin in the comments. Burt Randolph was the publisher. He ran the Rings magazine forever, and we'd be back now in Norman Keitzer's hands. So he would have Wrestling Revue, the Rings Wrestling, and Wrestling News, 3 publications. And because of that, of the purchase, he also got the license to distribute it on the newsstand. So now for the first time, Norman Keitzer is able to get his Wrestling News, his baby from the late 60s, finally on the newsstands for mass consumption, because Wrestling News was not for the masses. That was just an arena magazine or subscription only. So now he's able to release it, and you'll see he goes through a mess, constantly changing to figure out which is the one he's going to go with. So he'd do Review, News, and Rings for a short time, and then drop the Rings, and then drop Review, and go with strictly just News, and then it would go just Wrestling Magazine. I'm going to do a more updated video on the wrestling news information at some point, but that is a mess. That whole thing is so confusing, especially if you're following the numbers. Wrestling Review February 80, April, again, back down with Paul Jones and Flair, the match I just mentioned earlier, and Superstar Billy Graham here, June of 1980. Lew Weston is also back with the magazine. The very first purchaser from Stanley Weston is now back with Norman Kietzer, and they're working together on the magazine. This is Hulk Hogan's first appearance of a wrestling magazine, August of 1980. Tito Santana won half of the tag team champions with Ivan Putski. Sammartino and Backlund take the cover of October 1980, and that would be the end of Wrestling Revue until 1982. So Norman Kietzer and Lew Weston kind of pulled the plug on Wrestling Revue, and they focused on wrestling news and the rings wrestling. They were combined, all three of them together later on in like 1984. Like I said, it gets very confusing. So Wrestling Revue took a shelf for a couple of years, and then out of nowhere, it comes back. And I remember buying this issue in the summer of '82 when I was at my first wrestling show, and it was Backlund taking on Blackjack Mulligan. And I had never seen Wrestling Revue before. I was like, oh shit, what's this? And then we got it, and we're like disappointed, but because it wasn't a Stanley Weston magazine, and then you could tell how cheaper it was, and it wasn't good. But I got to appreciate it as I got older because this had great matches that no one else covered. And they treated it, real. They didn't give it, that sensationalism and phony shit that the other magazines did. These were actually reporting the matches as they happened. So as I got older, these reviews and wrestling news, became, the number one information for wrestling, for, real information. Pardon me. Wrestling Revue, September 1982. All three world champions now on the cover: Backlund, Flair, and Nick Bockwinkel. Salvatore Bellomo gets his only cover. And it would take a magazine like Wrestling Revue to actually do that. November of '82. I don't think you'll ever see Bellomo on any other cover, ever. DiBiase, Backlund in Rogers' corner, and Nick Bockwinkel recaptures the title back again from a quick match from Vern Gagne. That's an older picture that wasn't to date. He does get this title back from Otto Wanz, but that's an older picture he's posing with for in that one there. March of 1983, got the Strongbow brothers, who are the WWF Tag Team Champions. They would lose them right back to Fuji and Saito not long after, I believe that was. I believe it was on TV, they lost them on TV, yep. June of '83, Tommy Wildfire Rich with the Southern Championship. Tiger Mask takes the bottom shot with the WWF Junior Championship belt. Backlund on the cover of July of '83, and Hacksaw in Mid-South. Superfly Snuka, the Baron, Junkyard Dog, and Bob Sweetan on the cover. Junkyard Dog gets the solo shot of September 1983, and also talking about the return of Ivan Koloff to challenge Bob Backlund. Austin Idol, rare appearance on a cover, not very many for the Austin Idol. Junkyard Dog, also Andre, Sheik Adnan Al-Kaisi, Billy Robinson, and Ray Stevens. The Blackjacks, Lanza, and Mulligan hit the cover in 1984, and I believe this is one of the last, now getting close, and they have new ladies champions, Princess Victoria. The King, Jerry Lawler, takes the cover in issue number 10. Now there's no date on it. Now they're going by issue number 10. This is issue number 9. If you're wondering, 109. That one's 110. If you're wondering where 108, 107 is, all those numbers are mixed in wrestling news and the rings wrestling, and that's where all the confusion comes in. So those who don't know what I'm talking about, consider yourself lucky, because it's a mess trying to figure that shit out. This is number 110. Now Wrestling Revue is about to be going out and closing for good, maybe just a little bit. Who knows? It might pop back again. September 1984, Magnum TA on the cover. Issue 112, another collage of just some photos from Wrestling News. Cards, a lot of those pictures were from too. And the Rock and Roll Express, issue 114, to close out the saga from 1958 to this final issue here in 1984 with the Rock and Roll Express on the cover. So the magazine now would be taken over by the Wrestling News, the Rings Wrestling, and Wrestling Revue, and it would be just called, from this point out, Wrestling Magazine. And that was their plan from the 80s, and they mentioned this in their magazines. So, needless to say, the magazines were hurting. They couldn't keep all these publications going. They were in over their head.